Together. Yeah.
Let's go to this. Do you want to start anyway?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cultivation.
I know.
500 a year, rather than a percentage of gross sales.
Okay.
So if you're selling.
Okay, I think we're ready to start our small meeting today. So, does everyone have an agenda? Or
I'm not personal or, oh, no.
This is
Huge personal.
So, do we want to go around and do introductions, or are we fairly well aware of who's here at the moment?
Anyone on the phone? We know you.
I don't think we do have anyone on the
I'm
phone.
surprised, but a couple of people said they were.
I'm on the
Oh,
Is someone there?
Yeah.
yes, now,
This is Jude.
Hannah?
This is Jude.
Jude, okay. Hi, Jude.
This is Kim calling.
Hi.
Okay, so today we have Nadia, as opposed to Amanda today. And then we have Mr. Supervisor McCallum.
John McCallum, and I'm probably just here for a short spell. Karen?
Karen Byers, Mendocino Cannabis Resource, involved party.
Andy Bayowski, citizen. Christopher.
Kimberly Delacorva, Beth Ranch. Kerwin Powell, farmer, treasurer of MCA, general interested party.
And we always have Sarah. And Dandy. So,
And only Jude on the phone.
and Jude on the phone, correct?
Right now. I think Hannah might be joining us later.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yes, it's two.
I think one of us is us.
So just briefly, last meeting, we kind of concluded our discussions about micro businesses and what we would like to present to the Board of Supervisors.
Was I there?
I believe you were.
I had to leave early, I don't know how it's going to. How would you like to summarize it?
So, let's see. So things that we were going to consider, or that we were going to present to the Board of Supervisors included allowing micro businesses on parcels without the home requirement. Additionally, making the permitting process slightly easier, going from the use to the admin permit for cottage industry.
Excuse me, question?
Yes.
We had always called that a standalone permit, so what was your last description about not tying it to a home and then permits required in lieu of cottage or home occupation?
I don't really want to, I mean, they would be standalone. I just don't want to tie that term to them at the moment, just because I want to give direction and then we can kind of work on terminology once we get on that.
Okay, well then can you define the last two sentences you said?
Okay, so what were the last two sentences back then? So one requirement is that micro businesses are permitted through either the home occ or the cottage industry regulations. Both regulations require a home. So one of our discussions was to take micro business out of that home occ cottage industry silos that have home requirements. Additionally, the cottage industry requires a use permit. So in taking out the micro business from those two silos, also reducing the use permit required by the cottage to an admin permit.
So you're saying for a micro business applicant to make application, they also at the same time will be applying for administrative permit?
If it's through the
not cottage or home occupation.
That would be in addition to what these are.
One of the items was that standalone license, which is taking away from the cottage and micro. The other one was trying to reduce
expand the zonings in which we allowed micro without cultivation.
And then looking at the use permit barrier, and if there's options to take the use permit currently required and lower that to an administrative permit.
And what does it take to make that determination of lowering the permit category?
That I can't speak to. I mean, these are the recaps of the items that the group agreed to then present Board of Supervisors for direction. At that time, there'd probably be more in-depth discussion on what kind of evaluation or changes would have to take place to make that happen, if there's any CEQA steps that needs to be done, it's got to go to the Planning Commission. But this is just like points of things you'd like to see, which is use permit going to an AP permit, taking the microbusiness away from the home OC and moving that over so there's more parcels that can qualify without a unit. I can't remember what the third one was after those two.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
Expanding the zoning and also taking the microbusiness out of the, not just the home OC, but also the cottage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that as well as expanding the zoning in which it would be allowed.
Okay.
So
And it may
Corinne,
be,
Yes.
this is
it may
Hannah,
be
and
that-
basically these were the items that staff has been looking into based on what we all crafted the last time as the desired outcomes. So they're all hopefully very beneficial processes that if the board gives staff further direction, that yes, they can try to continue to refine whatever needs to be refined to accomplish these things, then hopefully eventually it'll happen. But at this juncture, what I'm understanding is that staff has researched it, and there are a number of little sub-issues that they need direction from the board in order to be able to proceed in this direction and to accomplish these things.
Correct. And overall, I think from the beginning, the goal was we take all of these recommendations to get the board's blessing to move forward on all of those to actually
Right.
Provide direction.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if I may, this is John McCowan, I think primarily the direction of the board was try and simplify this, staff go forth and investigate. And provided none of this is really in the environmental document, and I suspect that it isn't, or it's not a big issue within the environmental documents, then it really just comes down more to a policy direction from the board that, given that, again, we're talking about legacy operations, I believe.
Well, the CSBLs don't are not tied to legacy grows. So really, it would be a review once the blessing of the board to make the changes, which would primarily be in the zoning section, which would go through a planning commission process for ultimate adoption.
Correct, but it would be ultimately based on if you lower a permit, use permit to an AP, it would be based on a determination. This is really not a significant impact, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And we might ask Jesse or,
Andy.
if you have anything to add to that.
Ultimately, with regards to staff direction, the only thing that would really slow us up is, if it's found to be, outside of the scope of the environmental document, and we have to kind of go back to take a look at what baseline information was there. But that being said, just having walked into this conversation, I would, assume with
And I would suspect this isn't really something that was, it may not even have been referenced in the environmental document, or would have just been passing at most, I think. But that'll all have to be confirmed by legal, I believe.
I'm pretty sure it's not in there, because it was adopted prior to the non-cultivation ordinance, which brought the other licenses in. So I doubt it's in CEQA at the moment.
The zoning document was found.
Was tied to existing uses, so we just have to examine those uses and the allowability to expand on them.
And I think the goal, too, was to talk about manufacturing, because I think we want to try to get all of the recommendations for all of the different business types bundled quickly to get to the board.
Right.
So we can make progress this calendar year.
And I'd actually like to jump in here if I can on a particular issue, because I do want to be elsewhere. So if you had told me, gosh, the board gave direction and we've already approved that within the non-cultivation types, with the exception possibly of dispensary, certainly everything else, the board gave direction to have a setback of no more than 600 feet, and so I'm kind of asking staff, I think the board had this discussion, and we directed to really liberalize the setbacks in the non-cultivation. Part of the discussion was staff had simply transferred what we had said in the cultivation ordinance over to the non-cultivation types. And then I recall the direction of the board being, gee, we don't think it's necessary to have those same setbacks for the non-cultivation types. And does staff have any recollection of where we were in that? Does anyone else remember that?
Particularly setback language?
Setbacks for the non-cultivation types on manufacturing.
The discussion was that setbacks for facilities should be the state average of 600, with the exception...
For schools only, perhaps.
No, right now, currently, churches are still included for facilities, not for the cultivation.
So we knocked it out for cultivation.
Correct, and the reason it's still in there for facilities is that it's in the chapter 6.36, the tax collectors chapter, so we'll have to remove it from there.
Okay.
With regards to the amount, the only thing that we left 1,000 was volatile manufacturing and micro businesses with cultivation, because the cultivation, to my knowledge, still has the 1,000.
And I think if changes to that are easy,
Yeah.
not an issue to match the
Correct.
state, as long as you say, the board says a go. I think even addressing the Volter manufacturing 1,000 feet, we could change it to the state.
Yes, that
Not
is
a
one of the
problem.
things the state allows us to take control of.
And at this stage, I would say that actually we are in a much more comfortable position to make those findings, in part because we've been doing so with past applications and in working with the consultant who helped us to create the overlay districts in particular. They provide us additional information to help substantiate any findings we need to make for those setback reductions. So, you know, it's something that I think we'll be feeling more comfortable with now that we've had a little bit of experience and more information from, you know, this past year.
Yeah, Corinne?
Last night at the ad hoc meeting, there was discussion about reducing the setback in some of the accommodation areas from 1,000 to 600 feet, and I raised the question of why not reduce it to 600 feet for all other applications in the spirit of ease, continuity, fairness, you name it.
We can never do enough for curbing.
Well, we're trying to make it as good as we can get.
The ad hoc says, and we're in a different topic here, that was cultivation.
But, I mean,
last night,
when
but-
he's discussing how all the other facilities are also subject to various setbacks, all I'm suggesting is that we be
Uniform.
the same,
We've heard the
uniform,
same thing for,
and make
9
it
years.
easier for everybody.
We've heard the same thing for 9 years, and the standard's been the same for 9 years. The board could change. Thus far, the board likes 1,000 feet. Cultivation is fundamentally different due to the odor issues associated with it. So I don't want to debate it here, but I'm trying to make it easier for the non-cultivation types. The topic of this group, I would encourage you to focus on that, and do you want to go back to the board and review what is currently in the ordinance and ask the board to reduce those setbacks, eliminating them in some cases. I think the state mandates the 600 feet from a school. That's, although there's an option potentially to reduce that through an AP.
We've had two actually successfully go through.
So that's kind of a starting point. Dispensaries, due to the retail trade and people coming and going, I could see a justification for keeping the 600 in there as a starting point, again, subject to an AP. All the rest of the types, it's primarily someone's driving a van into a building and they're driving a van out. I don't see the need for anything other than state mandated, if that's where we have to start for the schools. The rest of the sensitive receptors, I think, could come out of the non-cultivation ordinance.
Yeah, I'm just saying, be as consistent as we can.
Well, and you can keep making that argument, but don't let it get in the way of making the reforms that are on the table to be made.
Yeah. And I think that the 600 by the state is not a mandate, it's just the
General
it says
suggestion.
200 on non-cultivation facilities except for dispensaries.
It's kind of like a
And
fallback.
to me, you could go to 200 if the state says that. I mean, again, most of the non-cultivation, other than dispensary, I see as being fundamentally different. And it's demonstrably zero zero or low impact to a neighborhood.
There's some kind of no smell clause, no external smell wording that probably should be looked up and added, but it should be considered.
So, with that, good luck.
Thanks, John.
Hey,
Sure.
Don, before you leave, this is Hannah, and I just want to really appreciate that you came to this portion of the meeting to clarify that you believe that board already gave direction on certain things, and thank you so much for taking the time to do that.
Thank you.
Have fun at your dinner.
Oh, yeah.
I know, it's personal, but it's even
Another ad hoc.
Right. So, I guess today's discussion is going to be about manufacturing. Do you want me to go through what we have currently and discuss that?
Yes,
Sure.
please.
Okay. So currently, for manufacturing, we kind of have it in two different, it gets approached in two different ways. The way that I think will be less discussed is kind of the straightforward, a manufacturer in an industrial zone. There hasn't seemed to be that much discussion, at least towards me, about that. But, currently we allow non-volatile manufacturing in a variety of zones that are industrial as well as commercial and rural community. And then we exclusively allow volatile manufacturing in industrial with an administrative permit. Aside from that, I think what will be our main focus today will be home manufacturing along with cultivation sites, which are regulated similarly to micro businesses. We have the home occupation, where it's the smaller of the two, the 640 square feet, one employee, and then we have the cottage industry, which is 2,000 square feet and 3 employees. And similar situation with micro business, a residence is required through those regulations to have a home occupation or a cottage industry. Let me just check this real quick, see if there's anything I left out. I guess that's a general overview of how we allow it. So when it's with the cultivation site, it's really very similar to how we do the micro business. And I think that's really, correct me if I'm wrong, what our conversation will be today is more about that. Before we do go into that, is there anyone that wants to discuss manufacturing not as home manufacturing, such as in an industrial or commercial zone? Corinne?
I just have a question. I just want to be clear.
Yes.
The 640 square feet and the 2,000 square feet, that would be for all, the entire commercial operation would be contained within those square footages?
Correct. None of the cultivation aspects would be. Just so if it's manufacturing, it's 640 square feet or 2,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if it's cultivation, and if micro business doesn't happen to ever stand alone, and whatever other words you want to use for it.
Right, sorry.
Then how do these square footages and a cultivation canopy square footage combine?
They would not.
Okay.
At least not for the county's purposes. One person told me the state, I don't know if anyone has heard this, that the state's counting the cultivation canopy in addition to the micro business, but
Yeah, Vandy, what it is that they're, in order to be eligible at the state level for a micro business, if the micro business activity includes cultivation, there can only be a maximum of 10,000 square feet of cultivation for that micro business.
So then it's not, but what I'm understanding is that 10,000 is not in addition to the distribution, retail, and manufacturing square footages.
It has nothing to do with the size of the buildings. It has to do with the size of the canopy of the cultivation. But I do have one question, and that is, if somebody has, BCC was requiring people to have a structure, a permanent structure, meaning bolted to the ground, even if it's small, for the distributor transport only records. And so people had to build tiny sheds and then literally show photographs that if it was on post and piers that they bracket it to the ground and stuff like that. Literally, these structures are only to contain the records for the distributor transport only license. It's for no other purposes. You can't store product in it. You can't do anything. Will the county be willing to exclude that building in determining the home occ or cottage industry? Because in some cases, literally a 10 by 10 or 10 by 12 shed that contains a box with papers in it could kick it over and make the difference between an administrative permit or not, or being eligible or not, depending on the zoning and stuff like that.
I understand the concern. In my reviews, I haven't had that be an issue in the sense that I'm typically given floor plans with micro-business applications, and I just do the calculations that way. So if you're giving me a floor plan that includes that small building for papers, I would include it, but generally people don't do that. They have a small structure that says manufacturing and distribution. So I just count that space. I mean, we can solidify that as a policy where we can solidify that as a piece of our regulation that states that only the storage portion, the cannabis storage portion of a distribution is what counts towards the micro-business and not the record-keeping space. But I kind of typically already do that.
I would appreciate that because I literally submitted, or somebody submitting today to you something that kicks it literally over because of a 10 by 12 shed used for papers.
Okay.
I don't know if you have anything to say, Mike.
Can you email me separately about that?
I certainly can.
Okay. But yeah, traditionally I just go with what the floor plans have shown me, and most floor plans are just saying there's one room used for both manufacturing and distribution. That's generally how I've been proceeding with my reviews. And then, Corinne, sorry, yours was about the square footage still?
Well, we're kind of getting at it from two perspectives, but I'm not quite sure what the county's perspective is going to be on calculating cultivation square footage in a cottage or a home occupation.
So it will not. So however, considering our large is the 10,000, and that's what the state limits it to, we don't have a single cultivation site that's going to be exceeding that point. And so we're not going to be, so the 2,000 square feet, say you do a cottage and you have the 2,000 square foot building, as long as that's where everything's being conducted, we're not looking at the cultivation, we're not looking at the paper storage building, we're looking at where you're doing the manufacturing and storing the cannabis. So yeah, cultivation won't contribute.
Thank you.
I have a more important question later, but it's off the topic. But the state allowed me to separate the one small building that I have with a doorway, and the paperwork was in one section of it, and then anything else was in another. So
are you saying you had?
I had a distribution transport with the state.
That's just for clarification. So are you saying you had one structure that was split, or you had two structures?
One structure that was split, and they allowed me to put a door in this, and the security was for there's one door to enter the building, but there was an internal door that separated the little teeny building into two sections, like two rooms.
Right.
And so they allowed the room on the right to be the office, and then the room on the left to be storage.
So we would allow that. And this is maybe, like I said, something that we can add to our code, but in a floor plan, just indicate one is cannabis.
You're cool with it, and the state so far has been cool with it, just so she knows that.
No, and you can have, you could have two buildings that make up 2,000 square feet. Mm-hmm. You could have part of one building be used and a full of another. It's just a total square footage of 2,000 or 640. But yeah, that would just completely fine, for planning at least.
Building department.
So are we jumping into micro businesses?
No,
Or-
we're done with microbusiness. Well,
We're done with manufacturing?
no, that's what we are on, is
Okay.
manufacturing.
Okay, all right.
So I think the question is, can, say, Kim here have a building that's split in two, where one portion is, say, correct me if I'm,
Distribution,
One
or whatever,
portion is
manufacturing,
distribution.
distribution, storage, whatever.
yeah,
And then the other part is
the
non-storefront retail or
Or I would just say,
office?
because they
or-
like that, the records to be in its own space.
Mhm.
So that's what I did, I separated the structure into two halves. And they had the little office, which is like, I don't know, 12 by 14 or something, it's small. And then all the records are in there, and then there's some like storage, but not for storage. So they were fine with that. And then the other side was storage, and that was for distribution, transport, light. So because they were saying like, where are you going to put it before you take it somewhere?
Yeah.
And so the small space is probably only about, I don't know, 20 by 15,
Mhm.
but enough to put stuff in, take stuff out, put stuff in, take stuff out, because it's
Yeah.
not for long-term, large volume storage. So they were cool with that.
Okay, what's the square footage of that building total?
Gosh, the whole thing, I have to have my plans here. 'cause
Is
I've
it
been
less
doing
than
too many
600?
plans.
Less than 600
It's
square feet?
gotta be, yeah, because
Okay.
it's like
Is your
maybe
parcel-
20 by 50, yeah, it's less.
Is
than
your parcel less or greater than 10 acres?
Way greater.
It's
Yeah, so
if
then,
you could fit into the parameters, and so far you do,
Mhm.
of the ag exempt policy, that would be an ag exempt building and would be approved.
so I think we got to that point.
And a sole proprietor with no employees.
Well, can I go this way yet? Are we ready for that? I mean, I don't want to get distracted and go.
Yeah, I thought we
So-
were on manufacturing.
Yeah,
I think we should put out our ideas of things you want to see change from manufacturing, and then do like generic Q&A.
yeah.
Right,
at the
right.
end.
I don't want
Yeah.
to distract.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, who else has
Yeah, is there any other?
concerns, ideas, changes you want?
I really do think
to
that our
recommend?
discussion about micro-business can kind of be folded over into manufacturing as well.
I'm curious, how many manufacturing licenses do y'all Sugar County's issued?
Other counties or this county?
This county.
Give me a few minutes.
Can I ask a question?
Let's make sure we all stare at Sarah. Yeah, sorry, is this Hannah?
Jude?
Oh, Jude, hi, Jude.
Yeah, hi there. We're moving from microbusiness discussion to manufacturing discussion, and are we talking about both type 1 and type 2 manufacturing, or are we just talking about type 1 and moving it from industrial into commercial zones?
We can talk about both. It doesn't have to be about non-volatile or volatile. But did you have any comments about allowing it beyond the industrial zone?
Well, it has to be. We have to move it into commercial because non-volatile, which has no.
Commercial too. Right?
I'm sorry.
But she's
Oh, coast.
Sorry, go on, keep going.
It's very hard if anybody talks over somebody else, the microphone cuts out. So I have all these little silent gaps in the voices. So I'm trying to cobble together what you've already said. So I do apologize if I'm asking a question that you've already addressed. But I'm trying to figure out the lay of the land on this discussion. Are we speaking of the expansion of zoning, or what permits are required for non-volatile manufacturing, or both?
That can be part of the discussion if that's something you would like us to talk about. I will say that given that you're in the coastal zone, and we will be bringing coastal zone regulations forward in the near future, you'll have an opportunity to contribute to those regulations as well, because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but a lot of this discussion is revolving inland ordinance.
Yeah, this is inland. The coastal ordinance is going to hit this spring for both cultivation and facilities.
Yeah. So once we do start bringing that to the Planning Commission and the board, you'll be given an opportunity to contribute or provide your fee. Stumbling over words. You'll be given the opportunity to provide your input into that process and kind of what you would like to see in the coastal zone for facilities.
So we may have more, but as of the end of January, we had 7. So I don't have the latest list, so there might be a couple more, because I know there were some pending applications.
So that's 7, and that wouldn't include ones that were issued through city regs, only through county regs?
Yeah, we've issued 7 through the end of January, obviously that's through the end of January, and
Nothing additional.
But I know that there are pending application, and there's a couple, just general facilities, industrial areas that are under construction and are hoping to be finished soon, so we'll probably have more manufacturer issued fairly soon once that building's ready to occupy.
But if one was issued through Willits or something, that wouldn't?
No.
Nope.
No, okay.
And did I address everything you were,
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Is there any other discussion about manufacturing?
In the breakdown of the licenses, this is Corinne. In the breakdown of the 7 licenses, do we have type 1 and 2 signed?
Like non-volatile and volatile? We do.
Mm-hmm.
Could you
Okay,
there? I'm
Sure.
curious.
I don't know if we have level.
Well, it doesn't say 1 and 2, it's volatile, non-volatile. So non-volatile, per our definitions, means any solvent used in the extraction process that is not a volatile solvent. A non-volatile solvent includes carbon dioxide. And then if we go down to volatile solvents, volatile solvent and volatile extraction. Volatile extraction means an extraction method using volatile solvents to manufacture cannabis products. Volatile solvent means any solvent that is or produces a flammable gas or vapor that, when present in the air in sufficient quantities, will create explosive or ignitable mixtures.
All of them that we've issued have been level 1. I believe there are applications for level 2.
There's been all level 2 requires an administrative permit. We've gotten 3 approved so far.
Going back to the question of definitions, has the county added into non-volatile, as the state has, ethanol?
We have not. I'll write that down.
We've been talking about this back when we were first meeting about this in early spring of, over a year ago, with Mary Lynn. It was supposed to be in our ordinance by now.
Yeah, the board gave direction to include ethanol as a non-volatile solvent.
I've been allowing ethanol as a non-volatile, so it hasn't been an issue, but we can certainly add it to the definition so that it's codified.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
I have a question.
Paul.
Yes, Hannah?
I'm wondering if it's appropriate to discuss whether Mendocino County is going to try to lead the way to allow for home kitchen manufacturing, and even if it is not yet approved of by the state, that we pave the way and have a model for the state to then adopt.
Can we actually...
I'm assuming you're talking about AB 626. So I think the first step is board discussion, which I believe will be forthcoming, about even broaching and determining to even opt into this program and do it, especially with significant bills like AB 377, which are cleanup language and changing the program to make it more safe to do this at home. So I think there is a lot of things up in the air for implementation of 626 in Mendocino County because of the legislative changes on the table for this year. So that will be an item for discussion with the board, and I would say we probably want to attempt to do it first based on the program that the state created and go from there. But ultimately, it's a board decision, and I know there'll be a lot of conversation about that. And like I said, the public health officers throughout the state and all the counties and cities are working hard with authors of 377 to make sure a lot of big issues that weren't addressed in the program that was ultimately adopted are, to make sure that whatever happens in home kitchens produces safe food.
Perfect. And what about non-food items? So,
being produced in the home?
Yeah. So, for example, what I'm talking about is salves and other things that, you know, legacy farmers have been making for forever, and that you have heard Paul Hansberry talk about eloquently, as well as Susan Tibbins. And so, you know, I'm just wondering, because the legislation doesn't necessarily cover non-edible stuff, it's more concerned with the food safety part. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if we could potentially, knowing that this other stuff is coming down the pike with respect to food and ingestibles, if we can lead the way in non-ingestibles so that tinctures and salves that are not ingested but are used topically have a pathway forward in home kitchens.
So, from the planning perspective, I don't think that's going to be an issue. In fact, that's literally what a home occupation and a cottage industry is. I would like to defer to Mike about potential barriers from the building code side about home manufacturing in a kitchen.
Well, it depends. Are you know, there's so many variables in it. Are you talking about soaking it in olive oil in jars and then extracting that, something like that? Or are you talking about using volatiles in your kitchen? And
so, Mike, I think that what we're talking about, yeah, I think what we're talking about is us coming up with what are the reasonable parameters that would not present a problem at this point so that we can move those forward. I don't think that anybody would expect that a volatile manufacturing operation could happen in a home kitchen, but, you know, whatever. I think that if we can come up with a list of items that, both from the planning perspective and from the building perspective, and environmental health and whoever else needs to weigh in on, would be acceptable outside of the category of ingestibles, and then come up with a list of reasonable parameters that need to be adhered to in order for it to have a pathway forward, I think that that might be a productive way for us to build it instead of us give you specific examples of people we know. I think it's more reasonable for you to let us know what the reasonable parameters are that you think would not pose such a difficulty or might need particular conditions. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, but my list will be rather conservative based on the California Residential Code, which dictates, you know, how your home, your residence is to be used, as opposed to you providing me some specific uses that you would like to propose.
Sure. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the issue is that we're not familiar with a lot of these manufacturing processes, so it's difficult for us to provide parameters when we don't even know what's going on. So I think it kind of needs to be a two-way discussion.
I think that's a very smart idea, and also, you know, and I think that maybe, you know, I can solicit from people all the different possible methodologies and specifics about the techniques and equipment and whatever, or no equipment, and we can start with that kind of a list. And then, Mike, in addition to the residential use requirement, I guess the important thing will be to see, okay, and how does home occupation overlay with that? I know that home occupation is not a building permit at all, but I'm wondering whether there are things that we should know about that are allowances for residential structures if you have a home occupation and you do whatever. So I definitely agree, Vandy, that it should be a two-way street, and I will solicit some lists because I'm also not familiar with all the techniques. I know that there's bubble ash. I know that there's, these little, anyway, there's all kinds of everything from really low tech to somewhat high tech, but not sophisticated. In other words, you might plug in a tabletop machine to do something, but it's all whatever. So I'll solicit.
I don't think it needs. Sorry.
No, I'll solicit that list, and then if there are, in the meantime, parameters that you all can think of that would be helpful guidance, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the parameters that the building department is most concerned with are the obvious fire, life, and safety issues, and electrical and mechanical would fall into that. So if there's any increase in fire or electrical or mechanical failures or possibilities, injuries in the kitchen, you should let those be your parameters.
And I think just real quick, it's not, for your side, Hannah, I don't think we're necessarily looking for how is this very particular cookie made, just how is an edible in general made, just to...
No edibles.
No.
Sorry.
Can't be ingestible.
Non-edibles.
I'm talking about non-edible. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
I
like,
think,
so how is a lotion generally made? How is a tincture generally made?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Kim?
Hi. In dealing with the BCC on the manufacturing side of it, even on the small-scale micro-business, the commercial kitchen aspect of it, they require that for their inspections. So if you have a home and you want to use your kitchen for even topicals, you'd have to pass that standard. Which I've had a restaurant before, and it's not impossible, but even the smallest manufacturer is going to have to do that. And I know a lot of the techniques, if you guys are wondering, alcohol, oils, whatever, making lotions, I've done most of those things, and it could almost all be done with non-volatiles in a small commercial qualified kitchen in a house, as long as you kind of went through it with you guys and said, okay, here's my wiring, is it strong, is my fuse box big enough, is my wiring, do I have any 220, do I not? So I think the more restrictive area is going to be with the state.
Yeah, especially since outside of microbusiness, you're talking about the California Department of Public Health regulating manufacturing, and that's a heavy regulatory burden to lift. So if you're going down manufacturing, you know what you're going to get into.
Yeah, and it sounds like environmental health is going to be making the distinction of the commercial kitchen. Thank you for that
Even
input.
drains, how your sink drains. If you're using oil, you have to have an oil trap. You have to do all these things that most houses don't have. You can retrofit it, but for someone who's just making topicals, that still has oil, that still has heat elements to it, still takes power, it still takes all the things that they're going to care about. And I just went through with a friend of mine who went through the public health and the BCC inspection on their kitchen, and it's gnarly. And it was a regular size one, but it doesn't matter the size, even down to your home. It has to still fulfill the...
And I think there's probably room to work on a way to see if we can create an environment where if you decided you were going to go down that pathway and pursue state licensure, that we wouldn't be a barrier, the county.
Right. Karen?
Yeah, I have a question. The state last year passed the S license type on shared manufacturing, and I'm going to definitely recommend it to our ad hoc committee on economic development to see if there could be incentives to establish that type of place. So if we are able to get to that point, we've already got the state license available. What would be the process to make sure Mendocino's in line, if I can find the right person to say they'll put out the money?
Well, actually, so informing our coastal regulations, I've actually had us include shared facilities on the coastal. We're trying to take the approach on coastal so that we don't have to go back and amend it later. And so you'll see a lot of things proposed in coastal that's not currently allowed on the inland side that we want to come back and
put in.
It just reframes a lot of those conditions.
So like shared facilities would become something allowed in inland.
And we can add that to this list. I mean, that's already the intention, but just to make it official from this group, the shared manufacturing.
I think that's the carrot we need to hang out to the community, if we can form a carrot, to get that type of facility set up.
And we also have events coming in. But that's one, because you and me had talked about that separately.
Yeah.
Hannah, did you have something?
Oh, events.
Yeah, events.
Yeah. Are they still there?
Hello.
Hannah?
Oh, no. No, it says they're there.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
well-
here. Sorry, I'm here. What?
Did you have something you were going to add?
Well, the only thing that I was going to say, and I don't know who was speaking about the commercial kitchen, and I completely concur in terms of retrofitting a home for that purpose, is that, remember, right now the state rules are what they are, but there are going to be changes in them too. And I concur with Mike that regardless, the electrical and fire hazard and everything else is going to be looked at, but that I do believe that there is some movement on a pathway, especially when we're talking about non-edibles, to recognize these home-based businesses so long as they meet various criteria, and the criteria might not be quite as restrictive as a commercial kitchen for all types of non-volatile manufacturing that's not edible. It might require some of those elements in the future, or all of them possibly, but I do see it changing, and I don't want people to think that this is how it is forever. And I really appreciated Sarah's comment where she said, I think it was Sarah, that at least maybe the smart thing to do is to make sure that the county is not a barrier, so that if the state does have all these things, okay, fine, but the county is not a barrier.
Especially if we're taking out ingestibles, because that in itself is a giant can of worms.
Exactly.
And literally no county or city in the state of California wants to do that. So it is a fight now for outside of the cannabis world. So I think if we're just talking about topicals, there could be an ability for the county in conjunction with the partners and, to find a pathway forward, and then it's kind of like good luck
at the state. Exactly. And I think the good luck at the state is two things. It's what the woman earlier spoke to in terms of the current requirements, and it's also advocating for change of those state requirements if they're overkill outside of the edible context. So long as the basic safety and building issues are dealt with, is it not really necessary to have that kind of kitchen? And who knows? And I think that whatever a lotion maker has to do out of their home is what should be required if they're using the same processes, as a non-cannabis lotion maker or a non-cannabis salve maker, the same kind of processes, whether it involves certain safety aspects or not. But anyway, my point is that I think that if the county can do two things at once, one, yes, not block, but number two, in some ways lead the way in this non-ingestible category for home businesses, then that becomes a springboard to advocate at the state level to separate out non-ingestibles so that maybe they consider changing their rules about what's required if appropriate.
Can we add to this discussion today?
Let's finish up with manufacturing and then get into that general conversation.
All right, great.
So was there any additional comments on manufacturing?
I think got great motion on this.
So what would you like to add about that?
So is there something that could be proposed as we're making suggestions to the Board of Supervisors? Have you written something out? Did you do something for the coast that be mimicked, or I don't know?
Generally, we're just, I mean, as an event organizer, you have to get your license in the state as long as we're okay with it. So what we're really just going to do is connect it to our existing event ordinance, or it's not even an ordinance, it's a section in our temporary use section. So we're just going to tie it to that existing event permitting process with the caveat that we're kind of adopting the 600-foot setback, so that if you have an event, as long as you don't have, a school right next to you, then you should be fine.
Great, great. All right, I love the way you're looking at it. Yeah, I figured I was just the way till I got my license and we figure it out because from the tone I had before, but okay.
We really want the state to kind of be responsible on
We'll
that.
just treat you like you're
any
other
event, and then you just have to have your state license.
Yeah. No, that's great. Oh, that makes me happy. We didn't make it difficult. It's great.
Is there any other general conversations, discussions?
I do have one on that the county allows a processing permit, but what's the equal to the state? The state doesn't have a processing permit, so do they not have to get a state permit?
The processing permit's through CDFA, but our processing is a lot general to that, so you can do packaging as well. So depending on what you're doing, you can do packaging and labeling or processing cannabis.
Pre-rolls with no additives.
I never thought to look under CDFA. Okay, I'll follow up on that. Thank you.
They have a specific processing license.
Okay.
But, you can also do packaging and labeling and stuff like that, and under our license type.
All right.
Corinne, did you have?
I'm waiting.
I think it's just we're open now.
Are we done with manufacturing?
It sounds like
Anyone?
Yep.
It's like an auction.
All right.
Okay, microbusiness.
Back to our favorite.
This is Stuart. I just want to let you know that I had trouble getting into the call, but I'm on the call now.
Hello, Stuart.
Hi.
So we're just wrapping up our conversation about manufacturing. It's kind of followed a similar conversation as microbusiness in the sense of kind of pulling it away from the home occ and cottage industry, as well as expanding it into a broader range of zoning districts. We've also had some conversation on home manufacturing for non-edible items such as lotions and tinctures. Is there anything that you would like to contribute or ask or discuss?
No, I don't want to take the time now.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, then, I guess we're...
Oh, my God.
Right.
Back.
I have to jump out, but you guys can move on.
Thank you,
All right.
Betsy.
Have a good one,
Thank you,
Andy. So, I guess now, if there's any just general discussion that...
I know Kim's like, microbusiness. You go, Kim.
Just in general, I wanted to check in. I was talking with someone, two things that I cannot get an answer from the BCC. I've sent the same email 5 times and I can't get an answer, and I thought I had asked one before, and I thought I knew the answer until someone said, no, that can't be. So I wanted to check with you guys if anyone has heard, if you have a microbusiness license that includes cultivation, say it's cultivation, distribution, transport, retail, non-storefront, which I hope every farmer gets.
But it can be 4.
It can be 4. So let's just say leave out manufacturing, because that's a whole other thing, okay? Because that could change everything else. So the bare minimum that I hope every farmer could get would be cultivation, distribution, transport, retail, non-storefront. If that's the case, does your cannabis cultivation permit move over to the BCC, which is what I was told, and then they monitor the cultivation permit? Or do you have to keep, that's what they told me, but then the CDFA said, yes, but you can't get your money back if you pay your permit fees. And then someone else said, no, you have to have both, and someone else said, no, you can't have it with both. So I'm not getting a clear answer.
Pick the one you like the most.
The one I like the most is what the BCC told me, but then the BCC and the CDFA don't like to work together very much, and when it comes to this.
I can see why.
Yeah, because they both want your money. So the CDFA doesn't want to say, yes, BCC is in control of your cannabis permit because that money should come to us. So I can't, when I'm talking to this group of farmers and say, okay, you're going to have to pay your cultivation fee to CDFA and also $10,000 to the BCC for your micro business, is it both or is it one? If it's one, it's half as much. So does anyone have a clear answer on that? Because I cannot get my email answers from the BCC.
Can we ask them to do so?
I think it's coming down to the timing of your application, and that you're going to convert probably to the BCC format after you've gotten that license,
So after you pay the money.
been a cultivator.
Because in general, yeah, because the micro business license is under the BCC authority.
What if,
But this is a
temporary?
messy, it's transition.
I think it's going to be that you have to get through the process of your plain old cultivation, and then
The annual or you have the temporary?
Either one.
In my personal opinion,
Yeah.
I would trust BCC more than I trust CDFA.
Okay, well then,
I would
we're
too.
set, because they said, this is all good. It's good for the county, because the county gets to then, because when I talked to BCC and they said yes, which they could come back to me now, they haven't answered me yet again, a few months ago, they're gonna have probably the Department of Ag locally be their inspectors, which would be awesome.
We'll take
So-
the money.
Yes, because then they get the money from the BCC to do the inspection. And all the tax money for retail will stay here. All the distribution money, taxes will stay here. Everything will stay here. That is my goal. So if that's I hope that's the right answer. Maybe they'll answer my email and they'll both start fighting again. But anyway, we want that one, so I'll just encourage that to be the case. But for people, now it comes back to if they have a temporary, because most of these farmers still just have temporary, annual applications are in, obviously, because otherwise they wouldn't be growing this year. So they have an annual in application, and they haven't paid the big fee yet. They paid the application fee, but not the $5,000 or $10,000. So if they pay that, and then 1 month later they get their BCC, they can't get that money back. So I've got people like, well, maybe I can get my micro business done before I have to pay the big money. I don't think that's going to happen. You guys?
I'm waiting on Sarah's 2-week, something's happening in 2 weeks comment.
I'll give you a little update. We're finalizing language to debut on the 12th. Essentially, long story short, so the state did a CEQA document. They assumed that every single county and every single city was going to do a use permit and site-specific CEQA for everything. They did their document, and they had this thing called an Appendix J. Here's all the stuff we didn't analyze. And we assumed that all these local people are going to do it, even though we were forced to go ahead of the state, right? So we can actually give you a permit to apply for the state. So then they're like, you know what? We don't have enough information to meet our obligations under Appendix J to make sure that all these things we didn't look at were looked at. And what they found is every county and every city did something different. Some people have ministerial, some people have use permits or APs, some people have a combination of both. So, it's unique to every jurisdiction. So what they found is they need to ask the counties and the cities for help for additional CEQA information so they can check their boxes on Appendix J. And so without having CEQA underway or having that information, they're like, I don't know if we can put people in provisional licenses. So we've been talking back and forth, lots of attorneys, blah, blah, blah. We came to an understanding that the county will be nice and assist them in their path because we did our CEQA document for our ordinance, and it is legal for our ordinance. We did all of our due diligence. This is the state's document and the state's Appendix J. So we said, okay, we will help. We will put together CEQA documentation that will show how our ordinance and our CEQA documents has addressed these issues that are in their Appendix J. And we'll provide that documentation when we issue someone a permit, and they can file that in addition to their other permit applications, and the state seems to be okay with that. They think that's going to be what they need to check their CEQA boxes. So we're going to be doing that for our local cultivators. I know different jurisdictions are doing different approaches. Humboldt's working on something similar to provide the state with more information, same with Sonoma County and some other jurisdictions. But so far, we got a green light from the state that, the document that we're working on to put together to show how our ordinance and our CEQA document fits in with their Appendix J should be sufficient enough to move those that are eligible for provisionals to provisionals. Because there are other requirements that may not be met.
Is that cultivation? Okay, because I will say I've experienced issues with non-cultivation as well, where we have a number of dispensaries who have applied with the state, some of them have gotten through, and other ones were told that they need a CEQA document.
Yeah.
And so they reach out to me, I give them the ordinance, and the state says, that doesn't suffice. So when I asked the state what they need, they said they don't know what they need.
Yes, and Vandy, I also am in communication, because that also came up. So that one's question mark of what they need, because
It sounds like it depends on who gets assigned to your case, because it's been very few.
Interesting. We've noticed that, haven't we?
Yeah, and so we have some businesses got a use permit or AP, let's say you're a manufacturer, you can provide that. But yeah, it's kind of hit and miss.
For all our dispensaries,
Like
all of them are in permitted zones, so they don't need anything but a business license. And that's come up with 2 out of our 16 dispensaries.
And we just had one that came up for a distribution. So I'm trying to work my way up the chain at BCC now to sort that out.
I kind of grilled one girl the other day about
And
it.
apparently they have like their processors at the BCC, but then they also have like their environmental science. And then it's like, who did you get?
Pointing fingers, when I talked to them, they said that Mendocino County didn't want to cough up the extra money to be CEQA compliant or something like that. And that Mendocino County was being very...
Oh yeah, we got the same thing, and let's just say we had we're doing above and beyond and spending local dollars to help them meet their CEQA document. Because remember, our documents for our ordinance, it wasn't challenged, it's on the books, it's legal. It ain't our fault, it ain't our problem that they went off in their land and did their CEQA document and they thought every jurisdiction would be the same. That's ludicrous in the way they set up the system, in my opinion.
Now they're saying just upload your county...
I mean, I'm sorry you're going through it, but there's a little comfort in it.
Huh?
Now they're saying just upload your county provisional permit.
Yeah, because we spent 2.5 months negotiating with these people.
So is that going to be it?
Well, we'll see.
We'll see, right?
We'll see.
Yeah, okay.
Can I interrupt
We got the okay. So
Real brief, I just want to, does anyone have any more building questions for Mike? Because I don't want Mike to have to sit here if he doesn't
Yes,
have...
maybe so.
go ahead, you go first.
So I've been working with people in the accommodations or the opt-in groups, and so I would like to know, so as long as they meet the criteria, they would have a path for microbusiness as well, as long as they meet the other criteria we're talking about for anyone with the 2,500 square foot. Does that make sense what I'm asking? Okay, I can tell. All right, so the opt-in groups, which are the opt-in districts, so it's R1, R2, irregulars, things like that. So I have been asked if they would be able to apply for a micro business without really saying specifically which ones they would want to bring in, but they would be able to at least check into that path.
Are there any restrictions on the opt-in?
Thank you.
Okay, I'll answer that
That's a planning question.
Okay.
So let's come back to that one. It sounded like you had something for Mike?
Yes. If the microbusiness application permit is for everything, it doesn't include manufacturing. It includes cultivation, distribution, transport, and retail non-storefront. Do you have to still have an F1 line commercial space if you have no employees?
So, we're working on this, as you know, and the consensus that we have come to help the small farmer, and especially the sole proprietor, if you have cultivation, non-storefront retail, where you have no public access, that sole proprietor is putting the stuff there and taking it out, and that also, as far as we see, could be used as your distribution space as well. And if the parcel is less than 10 acres and the structure is no greater than 600 square feet, you fit very nicely into the ag exempt policy if you meet that.
Congratulations.
And so the answer is that structures in the ag exempt policy are primarily a utility occupancy, a U occupancy. That would fit very nicely into that. Fortunately, in a home ruled state, I've asked the Division of the State Architect about this, and they've given us permission to use our discretion in this. And so
this is like 11 farmers right this second. I can just tell you.
So with those three that you've mentioned, now once we get into manufacturing, it's a different ballgame. You can still do it, but it's not going to fit. It's not going to fit into the ag exempt policy. But specifically, what you proposed fits within that.
Okay, so here's the great thing about that.
Mike, I have a question. And first off, thank you for your hard work on that. We really appreciate it. Is there something about the 10 acres, like if you have a larger parcel, but you still have all of the other conditions, 600 square feet or less of the structure, no manufacturing, et cetera, is there a pathway forward for people who have more than 10 acres, but all of the other conditions are okay?
Well, the more than 10 acres merely says that there are no square footage limitations and no height restrictions.
I see. So if it's really,
but we're going to question that when you come in with a really large structure and you're going to say, no, I don't have any employees. It's a 2,000 square foot, so.
Well, actually, and when you're saying no employees, though, if there's a family that's operating their own business and they're the owners, or the owners of the business are doing that, and there are no employees, there could be more than one person in a decent-sized building.
Well, the policy says shall have no employees, customers, or public accommodations.
Right, exactly. So
that
if
also means
that's it.
Correct.
Okay. As an example, let me just give this scenario so that Hannah, anyone on the phone, the way it sounds, that now a farmer can harvest their stuff, dry their stuff, transport it themselves to, if they want to manufacture, a shared kitchen, like Karen was saying, that there are people, I know people who are either making them now or have them now. They can manufacture, they can drive it back and package it, drive it to the farmer's market and sell it. All that tax money comes to Sherry at the tax department. It's going to be great.
Don't forget the taxes collection at the point of distribution for the state.
And process.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about that. I'm talking about sales tax.
On site, too.
Yeah.
So processing... So processing is a little different because the ag exempt policy specifically says processing is not allowed. And so remember, trimming is within that definition of processing. So that would not be allowed in this particular case that we have just described. So it's my understanding that a lot of small farmers are taking their product and having it processed off-site. But there's still a path forward. It just wouldn't be within this ag exempt policy.
But if you wanted to do processing as a micro business sole proprietor, you would still have to have some kind of F1 building in which processing could occur, or you couldn't do it at all?
No, you could do it in an F1 building, and let's not be thrown by that occupancy classification of F1. It's just the classification of a trim processing building, okay, as opposed to the U in the ag exempt. So yes, there's definitely a path forward.
But the U under the ag exempt, if it is within certain other specifications, you don't need engineered plans, whereas with F1 you do.
That's correct, because California
California
State Business and Professions Code requires that. So does the Professional Engineers Act requires that. It's a state requirement that we have to abide by for commercial facilities.
Right. So the question has always been whether or not we can remove the words trimming from the prohibition on the ag exempt. In other words, utilizing ag exempt for trimming. And that's really been the $100 million question.
Yeah, I think because in the definition in the cannabis ordinance that the county has, I think it sits in that definition, right? Under what we have to look at that definition. And am I correct? Did the county get that definition from the state? You know, I don't know where they came up with that definition, but it's beyond me I'm not allowed just to change that definition. I think that definition would have to change first.
But
So yeah.
But from a building law perspective, is there any reason why the no processing or no trimming has to be included in an ag exempt policy? And I understand that whatever language needs to be changed in whether it's ordinances or in the written policy, and that's not up to you. The question is whether or not there's a prohibition in state law that would prevent us from removing those words from the ag exempt policy.
Yeah, you know, in the ag exempt policy, mechanical installations are not allowed. So mechanical trimming with a machine would not be allowed. Also,
a plug-in tabletop is not an installation, though.
Is it a mechanical device, you know, to be debated? In speaking with other building officials, just last week with the building official in Humboldt County, Chad, we talk about this regularly. They are not allowing that. They won't go there with a trim processing room. They're going to stick to the S1 because specifically in the charging paragraph of that, it specifically mentions processing in that occupancy classification.
I see. So
yeah.
under F1, it says including processing.
Yes, in the charging statement of that Chapter 3, right.
Okay, but let's not have trim machines. Let's just have scissors and hands.
Is there more than one person? Because if you have employees coming there, then you have to have ADA compliant, you have to have safety parts. If you have a big family and you're all going to sit there with scissors.
You know, we're pushing the envelope. We're just talking about the ag exempt policy being set up for the small farmer, the sole proprietor. It was originally set up for those people storing their hay in the building and having their horses and whatnot.
I don't think that those are sole proprietors. I think that those are families.
All right. It doesn't say not families are not allowed. I'm not debating that. Sure.
Did we have anything else for Mike?
Which would be great. I just want to say thank you for yay doing that.
Yeah. It still requires a building permit.
Right.
All right.
No, I have to change the name again. It's been changed 3 times, so now it's going to be back to workshop. I think. I don't know, but it's great. It's great. It's build the structures you don't need, and if you're all those things like Hannah was asking about trimming and processing, if we can do that with distribution, we can take it somewhere and have it done. So we don't have to have employees up there, or or contract workers, or anything. No trimming services, no anything has to be there. We can transport it, the dry material that we can do in the permitted structure. Bring it. We can buck it down because that's not processing. It's just taking the material, putting it in the box, driving it, bringing it back, driving it, bringing it back. It'll be great.
Driving it was a big deal. Mm-hmm. So when you have a distributor coming to your place, that's a third party.
Right.
So
we get to be distributor.
So if you do not provide accessible features for that person, you are discriminating against their civil rights. Mm-hmm. And so
no, I get it.
And so that's why it fell into the accessibility realm.
Which is why we had our distributors who are picking stuff up. We have them meet us down at this county road that's accessible on our property. So it's all good. And this gives, I'm just thinking of the perspective of where my vision of, it all comes back to the pinnacle of cannabis tourism and what Mendocino could be. And if we can make the micro-businessing work for small farmers, it keeps them alive. It also keeps a more romantic version for people to come and visit, other than a giant.
Well, now we're talking about public access in tourism. Mm-hmm. That's great. Maybe your business is going to grow, and you're going to say, you know what, we've grown enough. Now I'm going to provide one parking spot, one path of access, and basic disabled access features, and now we can go public.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I think if everyone's good with Mike, I want to let him go because he has to drive back to Fort Bragg.
I still have some work here.
Oh, well, you have to leave 10 minutes early.
Yeah.
So now will you get home soon?
Yeah, by 7.
By 7.
Oh,
Thank you, guys.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'm happier than me, maybe.
everybody.
Is this the end? Are we good?
Well, no, I had.
No, we had that one.
Okay, we
Yeah.
got 10 minutes.
All right, so, on the accommodation district, so, the CEQA covered them.
So
Accommodation districts or cultivation?
I know, but then let me ask this one, micro business, they can.
So I think as long as it's meeting the appropriate, well, actually, now that you mention that, because they're two different ordinances, the setback reduction out of the overlay would not apply to the micro, so micro would still have 1,000, well, the cultivation would not, so.
Yeah, so that would be a conflict just right there off the bat.
Can I repeat my request for uniformity?
Yeah, I have it like multiple places.
Even if Supervisor McGowan thinks it's overreach.
No, I think it's agreed, and you know what we should also do? Stop piecemealing things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's see, wait.
I agree.
You know what I'm saying? Because when you have things on so many different tracks, it's always, at least how it's been here, minus the coastal to come, facilities is always catch up because it's never first priority.
Yeah, yeah.
Whether, it just, that's how it's played out here.
But it's a numbers game.
So
It
you'll
has to be that way.
investigate that?
You have to have
Yeah,
Okay.
cultivation.
I think we'll just probably change it
That's
so
what's
that
here.
unless they're in a cult.
Now.
We'll work the language.
Okay. And then.
And if we want more than that, we gotta do the other.
So the recordings of the meeting, they didn't get put up, because I missed last month, so then I have y'all tagged. They didn't come up till last week. Is there a way we can have them put up immediately for all the people that missed this, or things we want to reflect on?
We can suggest it. I think mainly it's because we've been very short-staffed.
Yeah.
And as you see, we've seen 3 different people
this
come in
may-
here to help us. We will do our best. And really, it's not intentional. We really, truly have been
Well, you could avoid
short-staffed.
phone calls if people could go listen to that tape before
What
they
phone calls?
Or just inquire. And you know how people call because without trying to find some information. Anyways, just a request because it did take till last week for the last month ones to show up. So I still don't. I mean, state requirements I think even happen later than that. And that's why I didn't know it was canceled or we're not meeting anymore apparently or something happened. But anyway, I appreciate that. Yeah. And I guess.
Are there
I have a
any
question.
applications on the docket for spring, summer, or fall that you're aware of?
Applications?
Events, cannabis events?
Not at the moment.
Just wondering.
There's no one that holds a license in our county, but you don't have to hold a license in the county to come to an event here. You just have to work with the county on that. So but there's a lot of us that are dreaming and.
I know. I was just wondering if anything was official.
Well, I need a lot of y'all to go set up your micro businesses with your non-storefront retail options, and then it gives an event organizer more opportunity. And I guess that would be, I mean, if we could just, let me just put this question out here and y'all can point me in the right direction. But so we've got our rock festivals, our festivals that have traditionally had a little cannabis space within the larger festival. They didn't last year because they didn't have a pass for it. They're hoping there'll be a pass for it this year.
You're talking about like Sierra Nevada?
Well, that's not happening this year. Let's talk.
Yeah, it is.
Well, no, here. Anyways, different. We can talk about that later.
I think that the issue is going to be the state, and if they're going to allow a cannabis at an event that also serves alcohol. That right there
in the regulations
is going to be the hurdle, and it's going to be at a state level. It's not going to be at a local level.
It's not going to really have anything to do with y'all. I have to deal with it.
You know what I'm saying? Because there is a lot of rules about a cannabis event, what can be there, what can't be there, and I don't know what the determination, if they're going to say rock festival, can you have a space that's cannabis? I don't know.
I have an update. I have an update on that. So, you know, the Cannabis Cup, what they did were they were able to carve out and put in a little separate entrance and exit for their beer garden or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of festivals are going to be able to do that. They can just create a separate area that has a separate way in and out that's separate, and the state has been okay with that.
Okay, great.
Also, by the way,
Gotta get Coachella.
If we can get Sarah from you an update and
all the way to Burning Man
on what the schedule is
millennials in LA,
for the Board of Supervisors and what issues are coming up when, it would really help if we were not having to wait until Thursday night before a board meeting to know that some of these issues that we've been talking about are actually coming on for the full discussion or for staff inquiry to the board or whatever. So if you have any projections of when things are hitting the Board of Supervisors calendar, I'd really appreciate it.
I have a question about that, Hannah. Does it work the other way around, whereas if you have a separate entrance for the cannabis aspect of it and a separate exit for that, or is it, because they had a separate exit for the alcohol thing, if they had a separate entrance and exit for just the cannabis area, would it work that way as well?
Well, you have to have a separate entrance and exit for both, is the point.
Not one or the other.
Both of them, because one is operated by ABC, one is operated by BCC, and they both have requirements about it, and you have to have separate entrances and exits. And it's easy enough to do.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, for instance, at Kate Wolf, there's a beer garden that doesn't have a fenced-in separate entrance. If they had a
they're going to have to
entrance
change that.
off for the cannabis area, would that qualify?
They're going to have to. No, it's going to have to be separate premises entirely.
Get another band. Get all your little bands that like scan you into stuff. It's fine.
Your rock band and your stoner band.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay.
Are we
So
meeting
Sarah,
next month?
Sarah, did you hear my question about the Board of Supervisors schedule?
So, I at least can tell you that cannabis, the monthly cannabis updates will be at the first meeting of the month. That's the goal. In terms of a heads up when things are going, I would also like that. I'm not joking. We are making changes all the way up until publication. And sometimes we get last minute items and things get bumped because of priorities. So it's really hard to give out accurate forecasting because things do change, and then some board members want things to come here at this time and that time, and then we have last-minute items that have to be heard. So it's a little bit more tricky. I think we are hoping, at least on the staff end, as we get closer to having finalized times for some items to come back for cultivation that were previously approved by the board and for coastal cannabis. Hopefully, we'll be able to, on that end, at least be able to provide a clear understanding of when those will be coming to the Planning Commission and when they'll be coming to the board. Right now, I believe we're aiming for a discussion around the coastal cannabis in April and May, and some of that, as well as items previously approved by the board, they're trying to get on to the Planning Commission in May or June. So you'll see a lot of activity in the Planning Commission in the May or June area.
But in terms of like these issues that you're bringing to the board to ask board direction for, when would that come on?
Well, we got to get through all those dang license types for this one. Are we almost done? What ones do we have left? Retail? Is that it? Microbusiness, manufacturing? Oh, distribution.
Oh, God.
We're almost done. I think at the next one, all we have to do is talk about distribution and retail, and then we can submit a request to bring a report out to the board, and then it's just about getting on an agenda.
I have an off-topic question. So I hear a lot about exclusion areas. What's the status of the exclusion areas? I haven't heard anything on that.
They're excluded. That'd be cultivation.
That's what I'm talking about. The cultivation, has that been implemented?
Yeah.
It has?
Yeah, all of those ordinances went live in January. Uh-huh.
So the opt-out areas went live in January?
Yes. For those ordinances, I think it's 60 days after adoption, no? 30 days for the,
It came on quicker than I realized.
because we started accepting applications in January for the opt-in, but all of those ordinances went live in January. So they're all up online.
So, Sarah, are you saying there's nothing pertaining to cannabis that you're aware of coming up the rest of this month?
Well, there is the cannabis update is the first meeting in March. The 12th. March 12th. We have not finalized an agenda for the 19th or the 26th, but the cannabis update is on March 12th, so that is the next cannabis item to the board. And those updates will be the first meeting of the month.
Okay, and in terms of any other non-updates from ag, which we're talking about, right? We're talking about the typical ag update? That's the update category you're talking here?
Well, the update in May will be from agriculture. There'll also be an update from the treasurer tax collector regarding taxes.
Okay, I'm talking March, so.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. March 12th, cannabis update. It will be not just agriculture. Sherry Shatmeyer will be reporting out on cannabis taxes as well.
I have OSHA training, I can't go.
I know.
Unless the board, Sherry Shatmeyer somewhere.
I know, we'll be gone. Oh, well.
We have OSHA.
YouTube.
No, we're doing our cannabis ultimate.
And I know that there's going to be items coming up from the two ad hocs, but
You guys, I'm going to sign off.
like the
I'm going to
timing of
the
the
ad
ad
hoc
hoc.
meeting now. Bye-bye.
I'm not really positive
Bye,
exactly when all those items will hit at this point. But my guess is there will be a number of cannabis items from March till June.
Any insight on
Probably 1 to 2 items a month.
Economic Development Ad Hoc Committee is going to do a report back?
We've only met once. They're working on reviewing other, kind of how other counties such as Monterey, Santa Cruz, what the ones we talked about, Humboldt.
There's a lot of things, there's a lot of items they're discussing. I don't know when they're going to report out.
Yeah.
My guess is between April and June. Because all of the ad hocs are working, and we're bringing like the coastal cannabis forward, so it's going to be a busy 3 months.
I thought it was just a little
Sarah about joining that.
Or I'll just take emails and send them out.
Cultivation ad hoc was the same agenda as it was in.
Y'all read it today, I'm surprised. Actually got feedback on the email, usually I get and beyond, I'm like, wonder if anyone read it.
All right, we're hanging up.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.